how many times have you been in touch with staff or members of the Department of Justice in order to obtain information related to this particular matter?
A number of times I've spoken to people.
And are you satisfied with the adequacy of the response of DOJ?
No.
What have they done or not done to satisfy your response?
They almost never answer a letter.
What would you say to individuals who would say that the Commission's inquiry here today, or your inquiry, is motivated by partisan reasons?
I think that's ridiculous.
Would your actions related to this particular matter be at all different if, in fact, this dismissal was done under a different administration?
No, it wouldn't, and I see the line you're going on. I have been in Congress for 30 years. My best friend in Congress is a Democratic member of Congress, Congressman Tony Hall, who's actually contributed to my campaign. If you go call Congressman Hoyer and ask him if I'm a partisan person, he'll tell you that I'm not. I was the author of the Iraq Study Group, which questioned the whole operation of the Iraq War when the Congress had failed to have aggressive oversight. I have the most bipartisan bill in Congress with regard to dealing with the debt and the deficit, Jim Cooper and I. So I approach these things based on what I believe is an important issue with regard to is it right or wrong, and have not been reluctant to speak out and criticize Republican administrations as well as Democratic administrations. So the answer to the question is no.
Do you believe that the incident that we are reviewing here today, and I think the scope of this inquiry is really into the adequacy of DOJ's response, although obviously we've got to get to the underlying predicate. But do you think that the incident that is the reason why we're here today is any less serious because it occurred in a black neighborhood, or that the alleged intimidators are black?
I think it's serious no matter what the case would be. For anyone to intimidate people for voting would be serious no matter what the race was.
And does that also include party? In other words, would it be
Yes,
less serious if this...
No, Republican or Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor?
With pass the remark, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Yaki? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for appearing, the Congressman Wolf. On a personal note, I used to be a senior aide to a young Congresswoman named Nancy Pelosi, and we had very good relations with your Office on Appropriations, and your staff was always very accommodating. So thank you.
Yeah, we still do.
And I know you do. And I also used to be a constituent of yours as well. I used to live in Great Falls when, in fact, when you were first elected, I think in 1980.
That's correct.
So I wanted to ask a couple questions, and first, I wanted to say that I do commend you for the bipartisan work that you have done on issues. One in particular was your role in questioning the interrogation memos that regarding now Judge Bybee and John Yoo, and the fact that at that time you initiated a request for the Office of Professional Responsibility and Justice to take a look at that, if I recall correctly. My question has to do with this. You've talked a lot about some of the different offices within DOJ, but OPR certainly has been, and perhaps I'm characterizing it wrong, but I think perhaps in your opinion has been a very good fact-finding and independent watchdog within justice. Isn't it? Why is it that you are not satisfied that OPR has opened an investigation into this matter?
It's gone on for so long. And other potential political reasons, but it's gone on for so long. And every time we send a letter over there, we almost get no really response back. I think the appropriate place to look at this is the inspector.
In the case of the torture memos, why were you satisfied with OPR versus the Inspector General, for example?
Well, we've gone on this thing over and over. We've talked to Dr. Gould, we've also looked at other things, and I've also talked to career people over at the department. Many times I've talked to them off the record, and I think this is a fairly open and shut case that ought to be proceeding and moving ahead. And you just watch the film, I don't think anybody here would want to go vote next November and have anyone standing outside of your polling place with that type of intimidation.
Congressman,
The obvious nature of that, and, you know, we have the right to vote, the right to be able to take a decision, the right to kind of go down. I mean, I've seen as we travel around the world and see the intimidation of people in other areas. I just think it's just inappropriate. And the career people, I think, have made a pretty compelling case. And the Justice Department was moving ahead, and something happened. We're not sure what happened for the political people to intercede and change that.
let me just I'll get back to career people in just 1 second, but based on what you'd said to Commissioner Personnel, I take it that if you had been informed that cases as equally egregious on the facts as this had been brought to the Justice Department in 2002, in 2004, and 2006, and had not been referred for 11B prosecution, you would be as concerned about that as you were about this case, correct?
I would hope so.
I mean, if someone was standing at a voting booth with an open weapon and asking only certain types of voters, you know, why are you here? Are you really registered to vote? That'd be the kind of thing that would probably upset you.
Well, I would hope so. I'm the co-chairman of the Tom Lantis Human Rights Caucus, which the speaker has
Sure.
set up. And whenever we see activity in places, whether it is whoever is involved in it, we hope we speak out. So I would hope so.
No, I agree, and that's certainly been your record in Congress. In fact, I also forgot how much work we did together on the China issue during the early 90s. The last question I have for you has to do with, I know that you place a lot of faith in career, and I think that as a matter of practice in the federal government, we tend to look at career people as having a little more insulation or expertise and professionalism in their job. The question I have to ask, though, is this concerns a department within the Justice Department that the Office of Professional Responsibility cited as having an extreme politicization in the hiring and firing of folks. And I just would like to A, put that on the record, and B, ask you whether or not the fact that if any of the individuals involved were part of that or had been referenced in that report or in other citations with regard to the politicization, would that change your opinion about whether or not, as career people, their opinion is as sound as, say, someone who's been there 20 or 30 years?
Well, I think there's a rebuttable presumption that career people are honest to be removed for whatever the case may be. And my staff just gave a note saying that Chris Coates was hired by the Clinton administration.
I understand.
But
Chris Coates was also...
Yeah, let me answer
Sure.
your question. Back in, I forget what year it was, the Congress brought up a proposal to amend or to drastically change the Hatch Act. Since I've been a federal employee, I was the only member that represented a large number of federal employees to vote against that. Because I remember during the Nixon administration, there was a politicizing of the career. At that time, I was working for a cabinet secretary, and I felt that the Hatch Act provided protection for career people the following way: that if someone could come by and say, well, we're having a political event and you got to donate, or we're going to be out flyering cars next week at the shopping centers and we want you. The fact that the Hatch Act was there provided a protection for the federal employee where he could say or she could say, well, you know, that's against the law, I really can't. Sure. So I have always kind of leaned in with regard to protecting the career. You see in other governments around the world, the politicizing and manipulation. So I think the career process has been very good, and I have always gone the extra mile, including voting in a way that probably many people thought I should not have, of not repealing or changing the Hatch Act as a way to protect.